Okay, welcome everybody to our session around managing Apple devices to empower the students and the end user. My name is Matt Pullen. I am the Senior Product Marketing Manager here at Jamf. I was also an educator for 20 plus years, working in secondary schools, higher education, and ultimately training future primary school teachers in how to use technology to make sure students succeed. And this is Ant.
Hi everybody, my name's Ant. I'm a consultant engineer here at Jamf. I look after our education customers and really help with our education solutions.
Okay, so we wanted to kind of talk about the journey that schools, colleges, universities need to go on to ensure that students are empowered to succeed, that lecturers, teachers are empowered to succeed, and that it takes a whole village in order to make that work. So when we consider all of the different elements and stakeholders, how does Jamf support that whole ecosystem, right from the deployment of the device to that end user, the student in many cases, being able to use it effectively in their classroom? So as part of our session today, we want to take you on the day in the life of a student when they're using an iPad. And how does Jamf support these different stakeholders, specifically the IT admin, the teacher, the student and the parent, to make sure that they get the best out of the technology and they always succeed as a result of using it. So let's take a start today. I'm going to be the teacher in this scenario. Ant's going to take on the role of the IT admin. And we're going to kind of show you how that conversation between the two of us can make sure it all works effectively. So Ant, let's start at the very start. How do we set up the devices so the student can succeed?
Okay, cool. So, every good story has a start, and this is our start, deploying the device. So we're going to follow today a student called Jack, and we're going to take an iPad and we're going to set this up as we go today. So Jack gets his iPad for the first time. Now, he can set this up at school, he can set this up at home. It really depends on what your school would want to do. Really doesn't matter. The point is, all that Jack needs to do is he needs to connect to Wi-Fi and choose a language and a location. This is similar to any iPad that you've ever turned on before at this point, right? These are the couple of steps that you absolutely must do. It takes a little while to do activation. At this point, okay, the iPad has reached out to Jamf. Jack hasn't had to do anything to do with this, but this is what we're talking about here when we talk about remote management. Notice how Jack can't skip anything, so we know that Jack is going to get his iPad enrolled into Jamf and we can do all the great things that we can do at Jamf. So we move on. The next thing that Jack needs to do to get this device enrolled is to log in with his Microsoft credentials. Now this could be Google credentials as well, but the point is it's the same username and password that Jack has for all of his other things during his school hours, all of his other computer systems and all of his other logins. Again, the IT at Jack's school has chosen to log in with their Microsoft account, but if you're using Google or other services, we can do that too. Once Jack has authenticated and we know who he is, we attach him to this device. It becomes Jack's device, and we are ready to enroll this device here. So when Jack goes away and presses enroll, you can see we're now starting to configure his iPad already. Now, if you've set up iPads before, which I'm sure many of you have, you'll know that there are hundreds, probably not quite 100, but there are loads of screens that set up, right? Where we have to put in things like Apple IDs and all that kind of good stuff. Because it's been enrolled into Jamf now already, okay, we can decide what screens we want Jack to see. So we can get him up and running real fast, which means in my example, I'm literally just doing location services. That's all that I want Jack to manage. Everything else we'll manage within the system. Now, we're at the home screen and you'll notice that it looks pretty standard right now. But if you keep a close eye out, you'll see very quickly that apps start to disappear. The stock apps that you don't really need in education that come with every iPad. Things like stocks or tips, or maybe the home app, those kind of things. We've made them disappear. And very, very quickly, you'll notice that we've changed the desktop as well, the wallpaper. Okay, now this is a great way to brand our iPads for the school as well. So if you've got a nice school logo on there. But again, the important part here is Jack hasn't had to do anything other than at the moment, choose a language, location, add to Wi-Fi and log in with their normal credentials. The next thing that'll happen is that we start to download and install our core school critical apps. Okay, I've sped this up a little bit because we don't have hours to watch these download, of course, but the idea is again here, I haven't had to do anything, or Jack hasn't had to do anything as the student in terms of Apple IDs, in terms of passwords, in terms of any of that kind of good stuff. These are the core apps the school have decided Jack needs on his iPad. Now, you'll notice that I keep saying core applications. Now, this is important because we don't want to do app overload. We know the story, there's an app for that, and that is very true. But also, there's the opposite end of that, the app overload. We don't want to overload Jack with all of these apps that that you might want to put onto his iPad, especially as he might not use them all. For example, some schools might go, actually, we want to give our students choice between maybe Pages, Docs, and Words. Now, essentially, they're all the same thing. They're a word processor, right? So what we've got instead is the Jamf School Student app. This is like a self-service application for Jack to go away and download other apps that he might need that aren't classed as the core ones to help with his learning as and when he needs them. It means that we can offer Jack, like I say, the different variations of those applications. So it's up to him whether he wants to choose Pages or Docs, for example, but we don't have to supply him directly to the device at the very beginning. He can just use the apps that he wants. What's really nice about this app as well is that we can have these collections here. So we can say, hey, there's the Microsoft suite, for example, and if you want to download the whole Microsoft suite in one go, we can. There's one button that will download the entire suite, as and when Jack needs these apps. So we're not clogging his device up with apps that he might not use. Again, it's really important for me to point out that Jack has not had to use an Apple ID. Jack has not needed to know a password to download these apps. These are school-sanctioned apps, right? That the school have decided, do you know what? These are the tools that we want our students to use, but we're giving Jack the flexibility to use those tools when he needs them and how he wants to use them.
Okay, great. So Jack's now set up, ready to go for school. So everything's on his device, ready for him to start learning. It's easy. He hasn't had to worry about passwords, some of those things that can kind of delay learning. I love that. That's fantastic. But now let's take that to the classroom. Jack's set up for learning, but he's in the class with a teacher who might not be that confident using technology. What can we do to help the teacher in this scenario so that learning just happens and it's not an IT request to do this?
Oh, that's a really great question. So we've got a couple of different tools that we can help with here. First things first, right? Let's, like I say, this is Jack. This is in his day of his life of kind of thing, right? So what would Jack do as soon as he went into class? Well, I know if I was a child, and I'm sure Jack's going to do the same, he's going to go, right, I have the internet access, I'm going to go away and I'm going to go to games. But look, as soon as he does that, we're blocking this because as part of that installation that we've done, that enrollment that we've just made when Jack turned on his device, we have enrolled into our Jamf Safe Internet solution as well. And our Jamf Safe Internet solution is our DNS-based filtering solution that, as well as doing content filtering, we can also protect against web-based threats such as phishing, malware, and those kind of like malicious type of websites that you might go to. So we did this again without Jack knowing about it, without Jack having to configure anything, but we can use this to our advantage, obviously, in the classroom as well, right? Because Jack now can't get to games and he's a kid and he's going to try and get around all these kind of things that we want him to do in the classroom. He's not going to want to do lessons, etc. So that's just one of the tools. The next thing I want to do is I want to bring Jack's teacher's iPad into this as well. So Jack is now very much in class and the teacher is ready to start the lesson. And what you'll notice here is on the teacher iPad, we also have the Jamf Teacher app. And this is around classroom management whilst the students are in front of us. How can I help guide the learning here? So one of the things that Jack's teacher is going to do is to start the lesson, they're going to select a pre-built kind of set of configurations that this teacher's decided they want for Jack. So essentially, we want to be able to help guide that learning a little bit more. So what the teacher has done is said, I have a set of maybe 6 or 7 apps that I want my student to use as part of this lesson, okay? And that means I can really focus that student's learning because these are the tools that I want you to learn for this particular task, for example. And we can do some other real nice things here as well. You can have attention screens. So if you send your students out to a different place to learn, for example, and you want them to come back, you could set an attention screen that says, hey, it's time to come back to class. And the iPad gets locked and they can't do anything with the iPad until they come back to class. So we have this, like I say, this teacher app here that really helps with the learning in the classroom for that teacher right there and then. So this isn't about managing the devices as a whole. This is about you and your lesson.
So I love that. So as the teacher now, I'm empowered to make sure that I'm in control of that learning. I've kind of got a filtered down version of an MDM that I can do some of those things, because let's face it, one day I might want the camera to be used, but in the next lesson, the camera might be a disturbance. So I can switch that off. So I love that. That's really, really helpful. And again, I want to be empowered as the teacher to be able to manage what the device does in my space. If I want to turn on spell check, I can do that. But equally, if I'm teaching literacy, I might choose to turn that off. So that's really interesting to know that I have control, because let's face it, children are children and they will try to find things to do that maybe aren't focused in the classroom. Which kind of brings me to my next point. If those devices go home, as they do with Jack, how can we support parents at home? Because again, that device goes home and Jack might decide to use it for gaming or going on social media, but the school have set some homework. Is there anything we can offer parents to support them?
Absolutely. And much like yourself, Jack's parent wants to make sure that Jack is doing his homework before he picks his iPad up to smash his score on Candy Crush or whatever it is that he wants to do, or go and watch on Disney Plus, for example. And that's why Jack's parents on their device have downloaded the Jamf Parent app. And in some respects, it's very similar to the teacher app in that it gives the parents some kind of like a mini MDM, as you said, but at home during the home hours. So as a school, Jack's school can decide that they only want their parents to be able to activate this app during the hours that aren't school, so the evening, for example, right? So Jack's parents here, like we said, want to make sure that Jack is doing their homework. So what you'll see on the screen here is that Jack's parents already know the apps that Jack needs to do his homework. This has been communicated by the school already. And they're simply going to select the apps that he needs for his homework and select the amount of time that that's happening for. So this might be an hour and a half. Jack comes home from school, and for the first hour and a half, his parents want to make sure that he's using his iPad for his homework and not, like I say, games or Disney Plus or any of those kind of good things. The best part about this is those apps that you are choosing as a parent that you want Jack to be able to use don't have to be on your device, okay? So you don't need to download these applications that you won't use. They're just available to you in the app. And as you can see, we can see here on the screen now, we've chosen the apps that we'll need for this homework, and everything else has disappeared again. So we're able to focus, the parents are able to focus Jack's learning. Now, before we kind of leave this kind of thing, let's just have a look at Jack starting his homework. One of the first things that Jack does every time he starts his homework is to go away and check his emails, much like most of us do when we start a task. And you can see here that Jack has got an email from his IT support at school. It's saying that there's been a breach with his passwords or passwords within the school, and actually he needs to reset his. So Jack, finding that it's urgent, of course, will go away and click on the link. And Jack, like most of us, probably expect us to hit a Microsoft site, right? Because it was a Microsoft365account.com kind of web link. Now, again, you'll see that our Jamf Safe Internet solution is kicked in here, and that's because, as I said before, we're not just doing content filtering, we are doing these web-based threat preventions as well. So we're protecting students against these web-based protections, because this was actually a phishing link. Now, had Jack put his username and password in there, of course, we all know that that could have devastating effects for not just Jack and his schoolwork and the systems that you might have given access to a malicious actor, but also there's a chances are Jack probably uses this password for other services too, so he might be compromised on them as well. And again, Jack hasn't had to do anything for this, right? Jack's school has had the foresight to understand that it's not just about managing devices, it's about securing them. And we can keep these devices secure, not just in the school, outside of school as well.
So I love this, because that's probably an aspect as a teacher that I haven't fully thought about in terms of like the phishing attacks and malware attacks. But I'm aware that this is like a big thing in education, right? Because schools become that target for these things, and that parents kind of know that's also a safety factor at home is a real good sell, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, for sure. And then just what we were seeing there for a second was after an hour and a half, which is what we were setting the homework hour for, the iPad goes back to normal. Or what we just very quickly saw there was if the student finished their homework before the hour and a half was up, the parent can just allow the iPad to be normal again. So it really does give that flexibility back to parents. But I think really that security part is a really key piece of what we do here.
So we've kind of taken you through that kind of shortened version of a day in the life of a student. Like, how do we go from making sure they're set up, making sure the teacher's set up, and then extending that if the devices go home to make sure parents are empowered as well, because ultimately we want to make sure that this works. And as Ant said, that management and security go hand in hand. If you want children to learn fearlessly, you kind of need to know that where they're learning is a safe environment. So we want the device to be ready for them, but we also want them to be able to be safe when they're on that environment. As well as that, making sure, to the point around phishing, that they're not then exposing the network to some of those threats as well, which could cause not only issues to them, but the greater school ecosystem as well. So at Jamf, we kind of think about this in 3 ways. We absolutely focus on classroom ready to go. Teachers are worked really, really hard. We know that workload is a huge issue for teachers. Having been in the classroom myself, I understand that. When we introduce technology, sometimes it can be that fearful approach to, I kind of don't want to have to learn something new. Well, we want it to be simple and straightforward and seamless use of the technology so that teachers don't have to worry too much about the IT support that they offer, but they have the IT to enable them to be able to do things effectively in the classroom. We then think about that from that focused teaching and learning. The Jamf teacher and student app just makes sure that the student's journey in that class is not fussed around by having additional options. If I want them to do creative tasks, I give them access to creative apps. That's not to say the coding apps that are on their device aren't useful for them. They're just not useful for the next 50 minutes. So remove it as a distraction. Allow students to stay focused. And where that's fantastic for students with additional needs in the classroom, it's equally as useful for any student who just might find a reason to not focus on what they're doing. We talk about it as scaffolded choice. We want them to have choice because that's empowering, but too much choice is a bad thing. And then finally, we know that not every school is blessed with having a highly trained IT admin. So we try to make those tools as simple as possible. So if you're the classroom teacher who's been given extra responsibility, or you're that IT admin with years of experience, the tools just work and they're simple to use. And we know that with cost cutting and budgetary constraints in schools at the moment, that's a key decision when you start to think about which mobile device management solution you're going to use. Who's going to actually run this, and how are we going to make sure that those devices always stay up to date? So we consider this then as part of our Jamf ecosystem for education. We start in the middle with our MDM, Jamf School in this case. It's what gets things started. It's what allows the likes of Ant to be able to get this set up for the school. We then extend that with some additional functionality to support your Mac real estate if you're also using that. Endpoint protection and identity management, again, to make sure things get set up right from the start. But then we start to layer in those additional things where we go a little bit further. The classroom management tools that we showed you, Jamf Teacher, Jamf Student, and then the Jamf Parent app, and how they work really, really well with Apple Classroom to empower the teacher to be able to do everything they need to do in that classroom. And then the step from that is those powerful app ecosystems beyond that enable the teachers to do everything they need. Things like Shobi, Explain Everything, Socrative, even integrations with Google and Microsoft, because that from an IT point of view still enables the teacher to make sure that learning is the key focus in the classroom. And then the final thing is wrap it all up with that Jamf Safe Internet, which really makes sure that the students can learn fearlessly in any environment, whether they're with you in the classroom or learning away from the teacher. And we know that that network will stay protected at all times because of that threat prevention built into it as well. So that's it from us today. We hope that you've had a fantastic session, and I'm sure you've got lots of questions. You can find us on stand NK50. We'd love to talk more to you over there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.